We're going to get started, I think.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to the West Pittston Library. I am Kendra. I'm the Adult Programs Coordinator here at the West Pittston Library. Today we're doing a lovely local history event hosted by the West Pittston Historical Society. And this is Mary Portelli, and I have absolutely nothing to add to the conversation that she will not cover. So thank you all for coming. If you have any questions or anything that you'd like to say on afterwards, I will be here.
Thanks, Kendra, and our thanks to the library for giving us a place to host our program. The goal of today's program is to give you some free, mostly free resources that you can use to do some research on your own about homes in West Pittston. And as I said, most of them are free, some of them are subscription, but there's ways to get around some of that. So we're going to see what you can find out about your home. The first thing you might want to know is, what is the style of my house? And there is this fantastic book here in the West Pittston Library, the Field Guide to American Houses. This is pretty much like the Bible of American architecture. And it's a wonderful book that goes through the styles. It gives you the dates. For example, if you have a Queen Anne, it tells you those were generally constructed between 1880 and 1910. And it just gives you some basic shapes. They talk about different types of windows. They talk about different types of what kinds of elements. And every style of American architecture is in here. So no matter what style your home is, it doesn't have to be Queen Anne. You're going to be able to find some information in here about your house. So this is a great book. It's over in the, if you come to the library looking for it, it's over there in the computer room to the right there. Another thing you need to know is about how the land in the borough was actually developed. And this is a map that is on our website. There's a link for it on your sheet. And by the way, the sheet will be on the website as well, so that you can just click the links and they'll be active. In the early 1850s, there wasn't much in the land that was West Pittston. At that point, it was known as Exeter Township, and most of the activity was over in Pittston. People lived in Pittston, people worked in Pittston. There was a group of businessmen from Pittston, and by the way, there was no bridge. There was a group of Pittston businessmen who purchased Peter Poland's farm. Peter Poland's farm was roughly from the river back as far as, I believe it's, what's after the park? Washington? Yep, Washington. Back as far as Washington, and from Exeter Ave over to a point halfway between Delaware and Montgomery. So that's where Peter Poland's farm was. They bought his farm, and the purpose was to divide it, to grid it out, and to turn it into building lots. The lots didn't sell really well at first because there was no way to get from Pittston to West Pittston. But a number of the developers built their own homes, so it kind of encouraged, they knew a bridge was coming, because before that you would have to take the ferry that was roughly where the Jenkins Bridge is now. But eventually the bridge was built a year or so later, and then the lots started to sell. The West Pittston Land Association, 1851, that was the first part of town to be developed. That's why a lot of our really old homes are there. They picked the nicest plots, and they started building homes. Many of the homes along Susquehanna Avenue, even the ones that look very old, are not the first homes on those lots. Many of those homes are the second homes on the lot. Then gradually other developers started moving into this area. It still isn't West Pittston yet, it's still Exeter Township. So over here between Susquehanna and Exeter Avenue, you had York Smith and W.C. Gildersleeve purchased a block of land. Up here, Wisner, Damon, and Damon, many of you know those names. They were interested in industry in the town and built the big foundry up in this section of town. Over here we have a small strip of homes in this lot, Lecoq and Lowenstein. So a lot of these are names that we know from our streets, and of course that's what the streets were named that. And then finally, this large section over here, by the way, this map is 1873, so you can see where the concentration of development is here, and then scattered over in these other areas. Not much here. This was the West Pittston Coal Company, and it wasn't until 1856 that they decided to do some development, because they were really not interested in the land, they were just concerned with what was underground. And at that point, they decided to sell their lots. And this is an old poster from 1856. E.C. Knight lived in Philadelphia, but he was the president of the West Pittston Coal Company. And they put these signs out advertising. He was proposing a town called Luzerne, not to be confused with the actual Luzerne that we know today, but he was proposing this town of Luzerne, and he said there would be a depot, at the auction would be at the depot of the Lackawanna Bloomsburg Railroad. That's up by where the pool was, the train station up there. 100 choice building lots, and it's giving you the size. He built a hotel, giant hotel, at the upper end of Philadelphia Avenue across the tracks. There was a big fancy hotel there at one point. And it was going to be this competing town. Well, eventually in 1857, all of these developers came together and everyone decided to incorporate as the borough of West Pittston. So that's how the land developed. So when you're researching, it's nice to be able to look at this map, first of all, and say, all right, which section of town is my house in, or the house I'm researching? And that way, when you're going back with deeds, you'll know when you get back as far as you can go. So that's the first thing you want to know about. Then, this is a free site, the Recorder of Deeds. If the house you're researching was purchased before 1996, you can access these deeds online. Every deed in the county from 1786 to 1996 is available online. You go to this site, click on log in as a guest, and I'm going to take you there. This is a deed you're going to see when you go there. Hold on one second, let me get you to that page. And you're going to have this, when you log in, you'll see this pull down menu. And you're just looking for the years that the deed I can search. So now, grantor is the person who was selling. Grantee is the person who's buying. So if you are looking at your own deed that you purchased your house, you want to look under the grantee. And it's probably going to be either this one, 1968 to 1993. Okay. Corpse, of course, is business stuff, so you're probably going to want to look in that one. Mine is a little earlier because I have an old deed that I'm working from. And you put in your name. Hold on. I don't know why that's not coming up. All right, but anyway, it'll come up with an index, and you can go in there and look through the index, and you'll be able to find your name, and it'll give you a book and page number. And when you find your page number, all you have to do is plug that in. Now let's go back to our PowerPoint. You want to plug in the page, the book number and the page number in the bar where it asks for that. And it'll bring you right up to your deed. Now on that site, they tell you if you want a copy of it, you have to submit it and pay for it. I just do a screenshot and it works just fine. So you can do this. But that's, and you just keep going back and back and back. So you find this particular deed is where the previous deed was worked. Okay, so this is where this home was purchased in 1951 from these people, Marjorie Casper and her brother, Lawrence LeGrand. And it was recorded when her family purchased it, it was recorded in this book on that page. So if I go back and look at that book and that page, I'm gonna see where the Caspers bought the house. And then take it back, in my case, it's like 2 more buyers before we get to the coal company that owned it. But that's how deeds work. So it's not hard to do, and it is online. And as I said, it's a free source. Another fun thing are Sanborn insurance maps. If anyone has ever used those before, you will find that you can see the footprint of your house. There are some map books here. These are available online. They're on our website, and there's a link there for our website where you will see it. We have these years available. These map books were created for insurance companies, and it tells the insurance company what the house is constructed of. It tells the insurance company how many stories are in different parts of the house. For example, if you look at here, it tells you it's a dwelling. You can see the porches are 1 story, the rest of the house is 2 stories, and it just gives you many, many details about the house. It also gives you a footprint that you can look at and say, that's not my house, or so maybe there was another house there before mine. Or it will give you the footprint and you'll say, hey, there's another part of my house that's not in there, so you know there was an addition at some point. So these are very, very useful. The latest book that we have is 1950, although I have heard that there was another one done in the late 50s, but I haven't seen it. So this is the most recent that we have is 1950. And we have actual map books up here that they're in color. The ones on our website are just the black and white version, but these are in color. There are some at the state archives that are also the original in color versions. The color is nice because it does tell you a little bit about whether it's a masonry home or if it's wood construction. So that's where the colors come into play. And especially if it's a business, it really gives a lot of information there. There's a code at the beginning. So if you go back to, let's see if I can find one here. Here we go. Sadly, these were through the flood and they're falling apart, but there's a key usually on the first page. What you have to do, find the section of town where you live, find the number on that, and then you go through the book. You can see my section of town would be page 56. And then if you look at the original part of the book where the map is, there's a key that explains all the little symbols that they use, because everything has meaning on these maps. Sometimes it just looks like a dot, or it looks like a wiggly line, but it also always has some kind of a function. So check the key, that's a really important thing to do. But once again, they're free on our website all those years, so you can look at those. Anybody have questions so far about any of these? Are we good? Okay. As you're searching for your home, whether it's in a deed or on a map or in a newspaper, you want to remember around 1910, a lot of our street names changed. Gray Street used to be Vine Street, and Delaware Ave was New York Avenue. A lot of people know about that one. Susquehanna Avenue, officially it was River Street, but a lot of people still refer to it as Susquehanna Avenue. And one of the articles I read about this said that people were able to start a movement to change the street name because they had their stationery printed up as Susquehanna Avenue. and they kind of forced the city fathers to change it officially. 6th Street and Maple Street I've seen used interchangeably a lot, so that's another thing to keep in mind. Another thing to remember is that sometimes streets were renumbered or just particular homes were renumbered as they added home on an empty lot or divided a lot into 2 building lots. So sometimes that changed. You can know that when you look at the Sanborn maps. You'll see a house number in parentheses. Usually the house number in parentheses is the older number. So the newer number is the one that's just like all the others. Some streets were completely renumbered. I'm trying to think of some that were completely renumbered. I know Luzerne Avenue, many homes were renumbered. I'm not sure if it was the whole street. And York Avenue was renumbered, right? Yeah, York Avenue was renumbered. So this is important to know when you're doing your research. Oh, and if you find, like I said, if you find a letter, I thought there was one on here. Don't see it. If you find like an A or a B instead of a house number, that means that your house was still being built or had just finished being built and they hadn't assigned it a number yet, which is great because it gives you the year that your house was constructed. You can just know right then from looking at that. So if you find a letter, that's good news for you because you know you have an exact date. Okay, newspaper archives. Within the last 10 years, we have been able to access all of the old Pittston Gazettes online. If anybody is familiar with newspapers.com, many of you have a subscription to that. It's just a wonderful picture into what was happening in the area. The Pittston Gazette started in 1851 or 2, I think it was. So it follows all of the development of the borough, all the way up until 1965. Now, there are gaps. There are years when there were no newspapers to digitize. So, we're still looking every so often. I found some from World War II in my attic that I was able to have digitized, and they're going to be added onto the newspapers.com site very soon. But it's a fantastic resource. If you purchase a subscription, there's different levels of subscriptions. There is a subscription that allows you to see the Sunday Dispatch as well. However, if you don't want to spend money on a subscription, if you go to the Oosterhout Library, you can log in using your library card. And let's go back to the PowerPoint, or to the Oosterhout Library site. There's a link on your page, but if you scroll down, you'll see newspapers.com right here. If you click on this, it tells you that you can go in and set up, I don't know why that's doing that. If it tells you, it will tell you that you can go in and set up an account. And you can do that using your library card. If you go on the back of your library card, you will see, I didn't put mine in here, but the back of your library card has a number. And all you have to do is plug that number in, and it will let you open up an account. Not even an account, just it will give you viewing privileges. Free with your Luzerne County Library card. So that's a fantastic resource that we have through the Oosterhout. And I'm going to take you to some things here. When you go into the search bar on that page, you're going to look for things like, the way you search is going to be very specific. You want to use quotes all the time because it'll limit you to just what you're looking for. Because if you just put 200 Exeter, which is the address of the library, you'll get stuff from the town of Exeter. So you want to put that in quotes so that it limits it. And notice I didn't use the street or the avenue part, because many of our streets in town used to be known as streets, not avenues. And then sometimes they used abbreviations. I find I get better results just from using the number and the street, the first name of the street. So that's how I do it. And remember, when you're searching, homes have been renumbered, so you want to search under both names, or both numbers rather, if you know both numbers. And you want to search the last names of the former owners, the people that you found in your deeds. So if I go back, I have 3 or 4 different names that I can search through and find out all kinds of fun stuff, which I'm going to show you on the next page. Another thing I do, like I'll put the last name of the person and the street name. I find that's helpful as well. So those are another thing that you want to think about. Occasionally in the newspaper you can find building permits when they were presented to council for approval. Sometimes those made the paper. A lot of things went in early days. You know, if you went to Philadelphia for a trip, they would put it in the newspaper. Everything was public knowledge. There was nothing much held back. The building permits also, I can tell you that we have council minutes, I think up until 1960, maybe 1965. We are going to get those digitized and see what the capability is. I would like to make them available on our website as well. Now they won't be searchable like newspapers.com is, but you know, you can just page through them as if you're looking through the actual books. That would be the capability that they would have, but at least to have them out there. These are some of the things that I found in newspapers.com. So here's where the deed was recorded from the person who purchased the lot from the coal company. Okay, West Pittston Coal Company became Lehigh Valley Coal Company. So here's where Mrs. Llewellyn purchased the plot. She actually purchased an entire block in what was going to be the town of Luzerne, which became West Pittston. She purchased the entire block for $850. So we know that there were no homes yet. It was just the land. She was also selling other lots. Down here is where her husband has started excavations for his new dwelling on Wyoming Avenue. And, you know, it's just this is the kind of thing you can find about when your home was constructed. Then over here I found this. Mr. LeGrand, who purchased the home from Mr. Llewellyn after he passed away. This is 1940. Fell out of the cherry tree in the backyard. And this is a story that I remember my parents telling me when I was a kid, you know, because they bought maybe 12 years after that. And I remember my mom always telling me that the guy that owned the house fell out of the tree in the backyard, and then the family cut the tree down. I guess he was 80-some years old, 84 years old, 83 years old, and climbing trees for cherries. He probably shouldn't have been doing that. So that's an example of the kind of things that are in the Pittston Gazettes. It's just, you know what, even if it's not your house, sometimes it's just fun to look because there's just some great stories. Find out what happened on your street or in your neighborhood. This is a common question. Where are the blueprints for my house? We get this a lot. And sadly, the county and the borough never required anybody to, any builders or any architects to give them copies of the blueprints. There are some blueprints that are still around, like this set. Generally, they're left with the home, the homeowner that had the house built. Sometimes those people pass them along. I know of a number of homes in town where people passed along blueprints from their home to the next owner, but not always. So I would say if you didn't get them with your house and you've really searched around in your attic and, you know, dug through things, it's probably not something you're going to find. But the next best thing are those Sanborn maps, because at least they give you an outside footprint that would help you. Going back to the newspapers, keep in mind that sometimes, as I said, the numbers change, but sometimes you can bring in some other chairs if you want. There's some in here. Feel free to do that. You're just going to find some really fun stories. When I was doing a history walk here at the library, we found a story about the library. Of course, used to be at one time it was a grocery store, then it was a cabinet shop where they would make cabinetry. There was a story about a fellow who broke into the place while the family was sleeping upstairs, and everyone ran screaming from the house, and there was gunfire, and I guess no one was injured, but they did find the person. But it just gives you a real window on what you can find. Where can I locate old photos of my home? Okay, so if anybody has a subscription to the Ancestry.com, that is going to be your place for old records. Now, if you don't have a subscription to Ancestry.com, I'm logging in under mine, but if you don't have a subscription, you can get access. Must be something with my connection here. I don't know why it's not. It knows it's not home, and I apologize for that. But if you go to the link on the sheet, it's going to give you the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission. You can get access to all Pennsylvania records that are at Ancestry.com by setting up an account through the Pennsylvania State Archives. So you scroll down, how do I obtain access to the PA State Archives? And that's going to allow you to set up an account through the Pennsylvania State Archives. And you just enter your zip code and you'll get a link. They'll send you a link. And you can go in and access all the Pennsylvania records. When I do a search for photos, because people post all kinds of pictures. So when I do a search for photos, I'll click on, I won't enter any names, I won't enter any years, I just, where it asks for keywords that it wants you to look for, I just put in Pittston, not even West Pittston, I just put in Pittston. And that will give you links to all the photos that anybody who's doing research in this area have posted. A lot of times people are doing their ancestry and they'll post pictures of their, their family, old pictures of their family. And that's how I found a picture of my house. And it was from like 1912, I think it was. So finding now there's a lot of pictures, but if you know some of the families that used to live in your neighborhood, you can go in and look for photos under those names, and it kind of limits who you're pulling up. At one time, you used to be able to go through and there were maybe 60 or 70 pages of photos, and you could just go look through them all, and I would look through anything that looked like it had a house on it and save it. Now there's so many on there that it's in the thousands. So just to start scrolling through and looking at everything, it's kind of time consuming. But if you put in like the names of the people that lived in your house, or the names of the people that lived in your neighbors' houses, if you can find out those. And just talking to your neighbors, talking to your, who used to live in your house before you, or if it's a family that's been there forever. They might have photos in an album, or, hey, my cousin who lives down in Virginia has a really nice photo album that belonged to, her mother, and there's pictures of my parents in there. Let's see if there's anything from the neighborhood. So just finding a photo of, and the picture I found was the house across the street. The girl was standing in front of the house, and she was taken, my house was in the background. So it was the kind of thing that I was able to pull up and just, and it actually struck up a friendship, because then I contacted the lady that had the original photo and struck up a good friendship with her. So you can find a lot on those two sites, and it's free. Between the newspapers and the state archives, access to Ancestry, there's a lot in there. You can pull up census records. So if you know the names of the people that lived in your home, you can pull up census records. You can pull up all kinds of, maybe even obituaries about them. lots of things, military records on the people that lived in your home. And it's just, there's a lot of genealogy that goes along with what you would do with your home research as well. Because, you know, your house, it's not just the house, it's the people who lived in the house who have become part of the history of the home. So that's important as well. And I think we are just about at the end here. So that would be my recommendation for photos. When exactly was my home built? Well, you combine all of those things, and you can maybe not pinpoint the exact year, but you might be able to pinpoint a particular window of time, maybe a 5-year or a 10-year window. Your architectural style will give you a big determination right there. You figure out what style is my house. That's one of the first clues. So it kind of gives you a window in which to start looking and searching. When you're on newspapers, you can search just particular years. You don't have to search like all 150 years of newspapers.com. You can search just, you know, the 20 or 30 years when you suspect your home might have been built, and find things about your street and your neighborhood. Sometimes everything about a house was in there. It depends on who the person was that built your home. If it was somebody who was well known in the community, somebody who was a business person, that was big news. Some of our really bigger, fancier homes, the Hughes Mansion on Delaware Avenue, where everybody goes for Halloween, that has a whole article about everything. It tells everything that was inside of the house, everything that was included when they were building the house, the type of wood, who was doing the construction, who was doing the plumbing work, who was doing every aspect of the construction. Other homes, not so much. You know, the homes that our coal miner ancestors built, there's not much in there about those. But you can still learn things about your neighborhood and about the house itself, and especially looking at the maps. Everything is on the map. So you can at least see what homes were in the neighborhood during particular years. You can see how things developed. There are a number of maps on our website as well. So you really want to, we just redid our Historical Society website last fall, and it's got tons of information. There's a whole section on resources that if you go into that, you'll see all of the maps and a number of other maps that I didn't even talk about today that will help you to be able to look for your neighborhood and pinpoint things. So that's pretty much where we are. Anybody have questions about this? And as I said, if you go into the website, you're going to go to right at the top of our website. I'll post a link on Facebook as well. There's a link to this handout that we have, and you will be able to click right on the links, and it'll take you right to the page, so you won't have to go typing in that big long address. Has anybody tried to do any research on their home? Yeah. Did you find out anything?
Found out a lot.
Fantastic.
Found out a lot.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's
a lot
great.
of clippings from newspapers.com. You know, found out there was a wedding in our yard. There was a funeral in the
Okay.
house. A lot of different things. I know my kitchen, a portion of my kitchen was added on afterwards. And we recently, last year, we had to redo our back porch.
Okay.
And when they were pulling it off, my brother, who's an architect, happened to be over, and he's like, "Did you check in between, like, where the house, you know, where," because he said they intended to use newspaper. And we found this little piece that just crumbled in our hands from 1941.
Mm-hmm.
So that part of the house, we assumed was the kitchen, bathrooms were added on, because the house was a duplex at one point.
Okay.
My parents bought it in 1960.
Opened it up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and opened it up, so we found a lot of information, and we just wanted to find out when it was originally built. And
Those Sanborn maps will help you a lot, because, you know, you go back, if you look, let's go back to that page. Where are we here? I should mention, the 91 and 96 maps really focused mainly on the center of town the West Pittston Land Association homes. Little bit, I don't think it went past Exeter Avenue. So if you live in one of those more outlying, it didn't include anything over in the former proposed town of Luzerne. 1903 is pretty much when it started including everything. I have a 1903 and a 1910 book up here, and if anyone wants to see these, what we'll do is just guide you through them, because I don't want to have everybody touching because they're so fragile, but we'll be happy if you want to look at those today as well. But yeah, that's something to remember about those. And then the rest of them, 03 and 10 and 1950 have the whole town on them. So you should be able to find, at least it narrows down. Unfortunately, there's that big gap between 1910 and 1950. And it's, I wish there was like at least one more book in between, because it would have made a big difference for a lot of people. Most of the homes in our community, I would say 1880 to 1920 in this town. Probably 75% of our homes were built between that time. And there was some development after the war, or between the wars, but, and of course a little bit after the wars, but that would be generally. Did you use any other resources besides newspapers or?
Ancestry.
Okay,
Yeah.
yep.
A lot of ancestry, look back, and we actually, when my husband and I first moved back into, the home was owned by my parents. When my parents passed, we bought it and moved back to West Pittston. And, we got this, I got a letter for this British woman. And I'm like, what is this for? And I just, tossed it to the side, but that name always stuck in my head. I found out that they were the people that had owned the home prior to the couple my parents bought.
Wow.
So it was like, she was an old, well, not an old maid, her husband, she was a widower, and she and her sister lived in the house, and it's just so cool to get into newspapers and read these stories, and like you said, like the parties.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we found out about the wedding. Like, I'm looking at my yard thinking, like, where did they have a wedding here? Like,
I can guarantee almost every home in town that was built before the 40s had a funeral.
Well,
'Cause
my family house is, well, up until
you're the funeral home.
we
Yeah,
we live
yeah.
but my husband and I live now we live at 310 Susquehanna, which is at the corner of Washington.
Okay,
Susquehanna.
okay.
But I grew up
Okay, yeah.
but I can't wait to be able to do some of this research online and look through the newspaper sites, because I have like, the history, the word of mouth history.
Right,
generations
right,
of my
right.
family, the neighbors and things, but I can't wait to actually connect some dots.
It's
with
fun.
names,
And
see the parties that I heard about, like balls.
your
that
house
you
had that ballroom upstairs.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
yep,
I'm excited
yep.
about that.
I can tell you that they almost always had weddings at home in those days. Very rarely did they go out to some fancy place and have a wedding. So yeah, the chances, and oftentimes people died in homes too, so there's that aspect. Yes.
This is just a little tidbit. I found when wallpaper, stripping off the old wallpaper, names and dates.
Oh,
And
that's fantastic.
underneath the wallpaper. So you never know where you might find, like you're saying, you found a little newspaper,
Mm-hmm. And newspaper was used a lot just as insulation.
Right.
They would stuff old newspapers in the walls, and usually it's so badly, deteriorated that you can't do much with it. But yeah, so if you find Pittston Gazettes, let me know and we'll get them digitized. Judy.
I inspired by your first one that you did. I did research.
Okay.
Now, I had a starting point because on the 1873 map, the dots on the map have names.
Okay.
So if you look closely,
Yeah,
your
they
house
do.
is on there. And so I had a point at which, but I went back and I already knew 3 houses. I knew 3 families prior to my owning the house. I went, and at that time, it was after the flood, but I didn't know they were online. I went to the courthouse.
Oh, okay.
which was really hard to figure out. And so I traced it back and got to the deed of the name is, I think it's Richards, I can't think of
Okay.
it right now. But I haven't, the previous deed, because it's 1873, I can't find out whether, who Richards bought, I mean, I haven't, how do you get back to the deeds that are not online now?
They're
Because,
all online now.
but it said prior from 1876, mine
No,
precedes 1876.
From, no,
Because-
right from the beginning, 1783, I think, is when the first deeds are dated.
Oh, okay, because
So you'll be able
when
to
I
find
got,
yours.
when I got to the one book, cause I had to,
Right.
at one point, take the book. The next one was someplace else.
It was probably out being digitized.
It was
'Cause this is a
someplace else,
relatively
and
new
the
project.
person that helped you was not there.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's what I was wondering, because how do I get back from like
They're
the
all
pre-1873?
Here you go. They're all on
Okay, I probably,
1786. They're
Oh,
all
okay,
there now, so
okay.
you should be able to do
so
that.
now I can
This
do
was a
that.
project that took a number of years. They took all the books out of the courthouse and got them
That's what, there was
digitized.
something on there, and
Yeah.
so I have no idea whether Richards built the house, or whether he purchased the land, or who he purchased it from. that's the
You'll be
key
able to
that I
do this
missing.
now. And
And I just wanna tell something else, I also went, just to tell other people, I just got so involved, cause I took a subscription, which I still have,
Mm-hmm.
a newspapers.com, because it's great. But, I just got so sidetracked, because there's so many, you see parties, there's things in
Oh,
there
yeah,
that
you
they
get-
put a sidewalk, you know, they're putting the sidewalk now on Exeter Avenue between
that's another
such and
thing that's in
such.
there.
You know, they're putting sidewalks, or somebody put a fence in their yard, and how nice it looked. I got so sidetracked.
I found out my sidewalk was older than my house. So, unfortunately, this is kind of blurry, but if you go to the link on the website, it's perfectly clear. And all of these homes, all of these lots that have development, there's a person's name written in there. So you can see who the name was on that land in 1873. So that's important to know.
Mary, could I just point out that the history of that map is that is from the Pomeroy's
Atlas.
Wyoming Valley, and people are looking for information similar to that for other towns.
Mm-hmm.
All of Wyoming Valley's on there. And that came from the Pomeroy's Atlas that we had here in the library,
Right.
and unfortunately somebody stole the West Pittston page. We had that map printed as a replacement.
I remember that, yeah.
And I'm not 100% sure, but there still might be copies for sale at the library. I'm not 100% certain.
Okay, we'll have to find out about that.
Yeah.
We have several,
Yeah.
2 or 3 of the original Atlas books at the Historical Society's collection. So that's
Osterhout
something
has
we do
2 or
have,
3
yeah.
also.
And Osterhout, if you go down to the Osterhout, you'll be able to find it there, or even the Luzerne County Historical Society. So if you're looking for
Yeah.
other towns, a lot of what we talked about today, you can apply to other towns. There's Sanborn maps for other towns if you go on to the, I think it's the Penn State Digital Library. If you're not looking for a West Pittston house, you can go on to the Penn State Digital Library, or just Google Sanborn maps, Pennsylvania, and it'll come up. There's all kinds of maps on there for other communities. Not every community had one, but, you know, certain.
Is that map the second link on the sheet? To
Uh,
access this one in particular? You know,
Let's see.
I think it is, but,
Yes,
okay.
the Beers map, yep. Your house was 1906, in case you're wondering.
Or our,
The house, the funeral home.
I know that.
Okay,
I know
okay.
the guy who built, well, we know the guy who built
Yeah.
it, we know some stories about it, but our house, 310, is actually, we had, some woodwork done recently and some renovations done, and just from the style of wood that's in our house, and someone who's familiar with the funeral home said, like, your house was, at least predates the funeral home built.
Oh,
like 20,
yes,
50,
yeah,
20 years.
yeah.
So,
And
we
that's
don't know anything about
that's
it.
a really good point. Often, the outside of the home has been changed and updated, and you look at it and you wouldn't really be able to pinpoint it to be as old as it is. There were a couple homes, if anybody was on our Susquehanna Avenue walking tour last fall I think it was, or last summer. There were a number of homes, I said, you know, they don't look as old as they are, but if you look inside, you can see the style of the woodwork, and that's something you'll find in this book. Okay, so as I said, this is a really good resource, and it's here in the library. But yeah, so this map has names on it. I guess I can't underestimate the value of newspapers.com. It's just a fantastic resource, and to have our local newspapers on it. And they're constantly adding things. And don't just search Pittston papers. Look at Wilkes-Barre. There are a lot of Wilkes-Barre papers that are open with the Oosterhout's free subscription as well. So you want to check the Wilkes-Barre papers. They had a lot of Pittston and West Pittston news. Also Scranton had some news from down here in the valley. So check both of those communities as well. That would be another thing to do. Yes?
Mary, the 1873 map, just that alone, the history of my house was that there were farmers by the name of Bowmans.
Okay.
And that they built the house 1860, maybe 1850. They had a lot of acreage, and you wonder, is this really true or not?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got the map. Here's my house.
Look at that. Yeah, look at that.
That was also
Oh,
the
wow.
area of the fairgrounds.
Yes.
The fairgrounds were in that general area.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Baltimore. Okay, so you're right on the corner there.
Yeah.
All right. Wow.
Yeah.
See
whole-
that?
Whole section from there down to the area of Fort Atlantic Avenue where the Armory is, was the Luzerne County Fairgrounds?
It was the fairgrounds. It was a local fairgrounds, and then for
Horse
about
races.
5 or 6 years, the county used it as their
Horse races,
fairgrounds.
airplanes landing down there, everything.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of where Garrity's
Yeah.
over between Garrity's
But in-
and St. Anthony's
In
Church,
the
late
early
1800s.
early part of the
Yeah,
century,
yeah.
and then, it was undeveloped for many years down
Up
there.
until probably 1910 or so, I would say. Yeah.
Well, long enough ago that people did land airplanes down there.
We have photos of airplanes landing there, like flying around. That somebody gave us some photos.
There's I don't know if we have any of those for sale either, especially the Historical Society. But we have a great book with a lot of photos of town, and you can see a lot of pictures of homes and various things that Mary built the book for. I don't know if we have any of those.
Oh, yeah. He's talking about our sesquicentennial publication that we did in 2007. Basically what we did, we took a lot of our postcard views and put them into a booklet form with some writing for the sesquicentennial, West Pittston sesquicentennial.
Great little resource.
It's out of print now. However, I have taken my files and we've burned some DVDs with the book on it, so it's basically a PDF of the book. So if anybody's interested in those, we have those for
I
sale.
lost mine I lost my book in the floor.
Well, there you go. This is the libraries. I can't sell anybody this one, but yeah, there's some other stuff up here. There's photos, and I will mention our Historical Society. We're doing our membership drive right now. It's only $25 for an individual or $30 for family, and it does help support our efforts and allows us to buy collectible West Pittston things that we can find on, flea markets, estate sales, online at auctions.
Canada.
There's a train, the train station sign is up in Canada. We're trying to get that, the one from the original 6th Street station. And we're working on getting that back, so that's not a cheap item, so that's something we're exploring. But that's what your money is going towards if you take out a subscription. We also have a nice little historical newsletter that I put out like 4 times a year that comes to you through your email, and it has a lot of cool things about West Pittston that maybe you didn't know. Another thing I didn't mention is if you go on our website under the photos, we have a lot of different pictures from our collection on there, and they change. I add to them every so often, so you can find photos on there as well. So maybe, if you look through there, you might find a photo of your house right there. Who knows? Any other questions? Anybody have anything else they want to? Have you had any problems? Yes.
Just a quick question on the Sanborn map.
Uh-huh.
I know you mentioned something, if there isn't a number, like a street number there.
If
like
it's
a letter.
If it's a letter.
Yeah.
that just means that your house was either under construction or sometimes the house is a dotted line, which meant it was a proposed home and that's the footprint that it would be taking on. If it's got a box but no house number yet, it was probably just being finished up when they were drawing the maps. And as I said, that gives you a really good clue that that's, if it's in the 1891 book, then you know your house was probably constructed in right around 1891. So at least it gives you a very narrow window in that case. Other problems? Anybody having a problem with their research that they want to put out there that we could help with maybe? You can always email us. You can always message us on Facebook. We have our YouTube channel. There's a couple of fun videos on there now. And hopefully I'll be posting this one as well, and I'll be putting out a link for that. So if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, you probably want to go on there and do that, and then you'll get the notifications when we add new content. And also join us on Facebook too. Make sure that you like our page so you'll get notified of programs and so forth. Anything else? Thank you all so much for coming out today. Appreciate your attendance. And if you've got any questions, I'm here to answer. If you want to come up and look through the Sanborn books, I'll guide you through those. And if you'd like to purchase anything or take out a membership, Judy can assist you with that. She's right up here.
The best way to get notified, by the way, is to become a member of the Historic Society.
Yeah, we try to do programs about 3 or 4 times a year.
And it's a steal.